Hi, this is Steve, sometimes known on increasingly rare occasions as your friendly neighborhood man in Magenta wig, and this is day 3 of my journey into Madonna. Now, I want to address something first that you might be wondering if you saw my first 2 videos. So, you might be wondering, I'm talking about these albums, why aren't you hearing anything from them? Well, I tried that. I tried putting up a video with some of Madonna's music in it, and YouTube wouldn't do it. I just immediately got an error that said, blocked in all countries. So that's why. But like I said, some of these albums I've been getting for $1 or $2. So go out and buy your CDs. You want to hear the whole album. So anyway, that's why these videos are strangely quiet. So, without further ado, we're going to wrap up the 80s today, starting with the soundtrack to her film, Who's That Girl? Now, unless you're a hardcore collector or you're really going for completeness, this isn't essential. I mean, yeah, it has 4 new Madonna songs, but they're not really... I hate to start this video on a negative note, but I will, yeah. So, the 4 songs on this basically just sound like cast-offs from her classic 80s albums. I mean, Who's That Girl is like Isla Bonita redo. I mean, it's a very similar song. Almost as if someone said, we want Isla Bonita for the movie, but it's not quite right. Can you tweak it a little bit, change the lyrics, and that's what we got. The Look of Love is a slower song, kind of reminds me of the drearier parts of Like a Virgin, and Can't Stop is just, it's Open Your Heart over again. Now, Causing a Commotion, am I the only one that thinks that sounds like a Paula Abdul song? Like, I don't know, it's something about the chorus, I can picture Paula singing it, but yeah. So, Madonna did those 4 songs, and then there's 5 songs that she's not involved with. Now, if they were going for a particular style on this, these songs are a very similar style. They sound like they go together. This album does have a flow to it. The other songs are just, by the other artists, are just generic 80s, though. I mean, they haven't dated well. I mean, you don't hear about the likes of Scritti Politti anymore. And the last song on here, So So Bad, is, no joke aside, because of the title being So So Bad, it's one of the worst songs I've ever heard, so... Yeah, I mean, like I said, if you're going for completeness, if you have to have everything Madonna made, get this for, her half of the album, but it's not the best thing, It's, eh. And now we move on to number 2. This is You Can Dance. Now, I mentioned in a prior video that this would be my first time hearing this album. Now, I bought this in a big stack of Madonna albums that I found in a half-price books or something, and when I first started collecting them. And it sat on my shelf. I kind of forgot that I had this, and because it's not really an album that people talk about very much. But what this was... once she had put out her self-titled Like a Virgin and then True Blue, it was getting around time for a greatest hits album. So instead of doing a straightforward greatest hits album, she did this, which is kind of a sort of like a mega mix. It kind of blends her songs into each other. There's 7 songs on here, and the first one's brand new, Spotlight. It's not too bad of a song. I like the message, be who you are, be who you want to be. It reminds me, the chorus reminds me a little bit of what's the song, Lucky Star, but, I'm guessing the next 3 songs, Spotlight and then the next 3 songs would have been side 1 on the LP of this, and Holiday, Everybody, and Physical Attraction are all strung together, and each has their own little extended remix. So it's a nice little overview of her first album. Where I really like this, though, is what I'm assuming was side 2, which is Over and Over, Into the Groove, and Where's the Party, which are long, drawn-out, sort of deconstructionist remixes. Over and Over on this is very cool. It has like a nice synth intro that they added, and the whole song's remixed overall, and I like this so much more than the Like a Virgin version. Now, the CD of this has 3 bonus tracks just for, added CD content, which they did a lot in the 80s. Dub versions of 3 songs. They're okay as background music. They're mostly, long, 8-minute instrumental versions of, Holiday. And I think the cassette had another one. It might have been Over and Over, but they're just added value. They're nothing special, but the first 7 tracks are really interesting. So yeah, I really do like this. I'm glad she did this instead of just a greatest hits album. Alright, moving on to number 3, and hopefully my camera's back in the right place. Before You Can Dance, I accidentally nudged it out of position a little bit. But anyway, so number 3, Like a Prayer. Now, no pun intended, this album is a revelation if you're listening to her stuff in order. Now, even though this came out in 1989, this is where 90s Madonna is born. Now, you hear some hints of the 80s sound, like the track Like a Prayer does have kind of that 80s vibe to it, but she enhances it by adding that choir. The rest of the album, though, is just her trying new things, new production styles. I mean, Prince jumps in and produces a track. And we have hits on here, Like a Prayer, Express Yourself, Cherish, Spanish Eyes. Like I said, Prince shows up on Love Song, and he also shows up on the odd little outro track, Act of Contrition, playing guitar. I think he's credited in the booklet as the powers that be, but yeah, that's Prince. Now, one thing I like about this is she changes the instrumentation on songs, which really stands out. Dear Jessie has very prominent strings. There's a couple of real beautiful, piano-led songs, Promise to Try and Oh Father. Now, Oh Father is a lot more serious and emotional than anything we've heard up to this point. I'd really like to know the backstory behind that song. Was it about her own father? Did she have an abusive father? Where did this song come from? So if anyone knows that, let me know. I'm very curious to hear. But yeah, fantastic album. Definitely the transition for her from 80s Madonna into 90s Madonna, which we'll explore more in the next video. I do want to add one more thing about Prince before I finish talking about this CD. Now, Dear Jessie is the sort of whimsical, childlike song about, pink elephants and lemonade. Am I the only one that thinks that sounds like something Prince would have done in the mid-80s? I mean, you can almost hear him singing that if it was on, Around the World in a Day. Just something I noticed, but alright, so that wraps up today, and that wraps up the 80s. So the next video will be, if I'm remembering correctly, we'll be covering I'm Breathless, which is the soundtrack-ish to Dick Tracy. We'll be getting into Erotica. We'll be getting into, I think that's followed by Bedtime Stories. So, you might be wondering, why not the Immaculate Collection? Because that does come out in that time period. When I get into Erotica, am I going to talk about Justify My Love, since that was on the Immaculate Collection? What I'm going to do with the compilations, except You Can Dance, since this was kind of a special case, the versions on this are unique. What I'm going to do with the compilations, I'm going to do a video about those at the very end. After I've done all of her regular albums, I'm going to do a video about the Immaculate Collection, Something to Remember, GHV2, which is the follow-up, the true follow-up to the Immaculate Collection, and then Celebration, which I don't own yet. I've heard a lot of bad things about it, that they kind of, needlessly butchered songs, and there's, mastering glitches, and so it's not really well looked upon, but I'll get into that in that video. Until then, I am Steve, sometimes known as your friendly neighborhood man in Magenta wig, and thank you for joining me for day 3 of my MADONNA-THON. So, until the next time, until we get into the early 90s, I bid you good night.